Start the recording. Welcome to the Proclamation 2024 Standards Alignment Dashboard Training. We're so excited you are here joining us today. My name is Janet Warren. I am the Review and Adoption Coordinator at the Texas Education Agency. My job is to oversee the State Board of Education's review and adoption process. And I'm going to let the rest of my TEA team introduce themselves. So Amy, we'll start with you.
Thanks, Janet. And gosh, it's so good to see so many of you here. My name is Amy Phillips. I'm the Director of Instructional Materials Review. I have the pleasure of working alongside these three lovely ladies that you're about to meet. And I manage the SBOE's review and adoption process, as well as the Texas Resource Review, which is our quality review of instructional materials. Cassie?
Yes, hi, good afternoon, everyone. I'm so glad to see you here as well. I'm Cassandra Piñato. Everyone calls me Cassie. And a lot of you who have been here before have worked with me as your personal liaisons. I'm glad to be working with all of you this time go around. And I've been with the agency for 13 years. I am a review and adoption specialist. So I've been doing this a while. Doesn't mean I know anything more, but I've been doing it a while. And I'm just, again, grateful that you're here this afternoon. And I'll turn it over to our wonderful new addition to our team, Sarah Macha.
Hi, I'm Sarah Macha. I am the Texas Resource Review Project Manager. I am brand new to this wonderful team. Just started Monday, so I'm learning a lot, but it's great to see everybody. I'm glad to be part of the webinar today.
Thank you, team. All right. Let me move some things around. Perfect. All right, in this training, I'll provide you information you need to complete your correlations. Some of this information will be a review if you have previously participated in a standards alignment review. We will review where you enter your citations, how the review team determines standards alignment coverage, and we'll go over some next steps. This meeting is being recorded, and I will send the presentation slides to everyone registered for the webinar after the meeting. It'll probably be tomorrow or possibly Monday, because I have to get the recording posted. And then if you would share that recording with your content team if they were unable to join the webinar, because it would be important for them to have this information. And then if you are have any questions, I will be pausing after each section of the presentation. You can unmute yourself and ask your questions, or you can type your questions in the chat and we'll respond to your questions. So the first thing we're going to cover is TEKS correlations. As you know, the Texas Essential Knowledge and Skills are made up of three parts: the introduction, the knowledge and skill statement, and the student expectations. The introduction is a general description of the content in the course. The knowledge and skill statements, or KSSs, are broad statements of what students must know and be able to do. Student expectations, or SEs, provide specific information about how the student demonstrates their learning. And then TEA creates breakouts to determine alignment to the student expectations in instructional materials. The breakouts are the component parts of each student expectation, and the breakouts is used to determine coverage in this of a student expectation. So a citation is the identification of content that covers the breakout. The TEKS correlations contain all of the citations submitted by a publisher for an instructional material or set of materials. And one thing that's important to remember is a student expectation is considered addressed only if each breakout within the student expectation is addressed. There are two types of citations: narrative citations and activity citations. We often get questions from publishers about what counts as a narrative and what counts as an activity. And we suggest using these guiding principles to make that determination. A narrative citation provides an opportunity for the teacher to teach the knowledge or skill, or an opportunity for the student to learn the knowledge or skill. And an activity citation provides an opportunity for the student to demonstrate the knowledge or practice the skill. It's crucial that you supply carefully constructed and accurate correlations. The state review panels use your correlations as their primary reference as they review your instructional materials. You're only able to provide a limited number of citations for each breakout. For that reason, it's important that you carefully choose the best, most closely aligned content for every citation. Poorly chosen citations can impact your final TEKS percentages. Be very specific when describing the location of your citations. For example, in the description of the specific location, you might say top of the page, or second paragraph, or under the practice section. And you must hyperlink to the exact location of the citation in your product. Be sure to test your hyperlinks that you enter in the URL section on the dashboard. You will want the reviewers to be able to easily navigate to the content in your material that's referenced in your citations. Publishers are required to demonstrate alignment in both the student and the teacher materials. Student materials consist of is for content that is intended for the student consumption. Some examples could be like the student edition, workbooks, Blackline Masters from the teacher edition, assessments, readers, posters, and it could even be portions of the teacher edition that provide prompts of what the student should do. You'll select student teacher when citing content that's intended for student consumption. The reason that we named the audience student and teacher is that if it's accepted by the reviewers, the publisher will also receive credit for covering this type of content in the teacher materials, since every component in a program is available for teacher consumption. You'll select teacher when citing content that is intended only for the teacher. Some examples of this would include guidance on how to implement a lesson, differentiated instruction, or monitoring student progress. At a minimum, you must provide at least 2 citations from material intended for students. This is for the TEKS citations. 1 narrative citation and 1 activity citation for every breakout. You're required to demonstrate alignment in both the student and the teacher materials. However, remember from the previous slide that any citation accepted from the student material will count toward coverage in the teacher material. This is because teachers use both the student and the teacher materials to plan and deliver instruction. You'll have the opportunity to provide up to 8 citations for each breakout. You can split that evenly and do 4 narrative and 4 activity citations. That's kind of a rule of thumb, but it's not a requirement. The only requirement is that 8 is the limit that you have, and you have to have at least 1 student narrative and activity. We do encourage that you provide multiple citations in the event that the panel does not accept your first citation. Excuse me. Remember, a student expectation is covered only if its breakouts are addressed, and that's all of the breakouts are addressed. And each breakout is considered covered only if 1 narrative and an activity citation for that breakout is accepted by the review panel. Now we're going to talk about ELPS citations because it's a little bit different. Materials in the core content areas must cover at least 100% of the applicable ELPS. At a minimum, you must provide at least 1 citation from material intended for teachers for grades K-5 and for students and teachers for grades 6 through 12. Citations can be a narrative or an activity. You'll see the requirements for each breakout on the ELPS breakout document posted on the TEA website. And I think Cassie was going to share a link to that in the chat.
I did. I shared one to the actual, all the breakout documents, and then one specifically just to the Science ELPS breakouts.
Perfect. Thank you. As we stated in the previous slide, any citation accepted from the student material will count towards coverage in the teacher material. Again, you'll have the opportunity to provide up to 8 citations for each breakout. And we also still encourage that you provide multiple citations in the event that the panel does not accept your first citation. Just like in the TEKS, a student expectation is covered only if each of its breakouts are addressed. The difference for the ELPS is that a breakout is covered if one narrative or activity citation for that breakout is accepted. Okay, reviewers will move through the citations for each breakout in this order. They're first going to review all the narrative citations provided from the student material until they've accepted one or rejected all. This is why it's important to put your strongest student narrative citation first. If they reject all, they must move to the narrative citations provided from the teacher material. But these citations will not count towards coverage in the student material, which is your official TEKS percentage. That's not true for the ELPS, but for the TEKS it is true. Then reviewers will repeat this process for each activity citation. So for the ELPS, they'll go through and look at just a citation that for K5 could be student and teacher or teacher only. And for 612 needs to be student and teacher and teacher only. But if you have a student/teacher citation accepted, the teacher will automatically be accepted because it's covered in the student citation. All right, we're going to pause here to see if there are any questions about TEKS correlations.
I have a question regarding the ELPS.
Yes.
In the breakout session or in the breakout document, if it is grayed out or indicated as NA, does that mean we do not need to align to that?
That is correct. You
Okay.
do not have to show alignment in the dashboard for anything that is grayed out. You won't even see those student expectations or breakouts in the dashboard because it's only going to be the ones that were not grayed out that are showing.
I have a question related to the ELPS as well. Is it the expectation that there would be an ELPS correlation for each science TEKS breakout from that perspective, or is it taking the 45 second through 12th grade ELPS and just showing the correlation to each ELP and saying where within that grade level that ELP skill is found? So I'm just trying to see which angle you're coming at the ELPS alignment from. Is it starting with the ELPS or starting with the TEKS science
It will be
breakouts?
Starting with the ELPS. So you'll use the TEKS science breakouts to correlate to the TEKS, and you'll use the ELPS science breakouts to correlate to the ELPS.
Okay, great. Thank you.
Any other questions concerning this section?
Just
I have a question.
go ahead.
Sorry, I'm not sure if I interrupted somebody. I have a question that it's more related. It has to do with the correlations, both TEKS and ELPS, but it's more in relation to the preliminary ones. Is that something you're going to cover later, or can we ask that at the end?
We're going to cover preliminary correlations.
Okay, thank you.
Just one small additional question on the activity component where they can either demonstrate or practice. Would an assessment, a formative assessment, be considered practice as an activity, or is it just related to some sort of a hands-on or a virtual, like a lab kind of activity?
Amy, correct me if I'm wrong, but I do think the assessment would count.
Assessments are an opportunity to demonstrate knowledge.
Okay, so it would be under the activity
Correct.
categories. Okay, thank you.
Okay. Well, if there are no more questions on this section, we'll move forward. The next part is going to be about using the dashboard and determining TEKS percentages. So several of you may have already received a login to the Standards Alignment Dashboard. If you've submitted a statement of intent to bid already, the main company contact should have received an email with your username and a link to create a password. That email could have been in your junk mail or your spam folder. It's going to come from the Texas Resource Review. If you've received that email and want to log into the dashboard and follow along as I demonstrate, you're welcome to do so. For those of you that do not have access already, you can just follow along with me because I'm going to demonstrate all of these steps. The first thing you're going to end up doing is logging into the dashboard. It's important to remember that the admin login link is in the footer of this page. We have a specific reason for putting it kind of hidden on the page because this page is used by anyone that wants to review the Texas Resource Review documents that come. It has the rubric, it has previous reviews for our quality review, and people were getting confused thinking they needed to log in to get to that information, and all that information is freely available. Only people need to log in to enter correlations like publishers or for our reviewers when it's time to vote on those correlations. Once you get in, you're going to use the publisher dashboard link. You'll add a program, you'll select the standard, you'll enter the program title and program ISBN, and you'll enter the username and password for a program. And then you will have to enter the credentials each time you need to add a new program. So now I'm going to show. Cassie, can you see the Texas Resource Review page?
Yes.
Perfect. All right, so as I said, down in the footer, you will have a link that says admin login. And then you'll enter your username and your password. And once you get here, you will select Publisher Dashboard. You're able to update any of this information if need be, but for now, we're just going to Publisher Dashboard. To add a program, you're going to click Add a Program. From the drop-down menu, you're going to select the standard for the course that you are entering correlations for. So for this example, I am going to say science first grade. And you're going to enter the name, the title of your program. I'm going to just call mine a test program. You will enter your ISBN. Without any hyphens in it. If your material is behind a username and password and you need credentials to get to it, you'll enter the credentials here. You can add additional credentials if there are multiple usernames and passwords for either TEA staff or the review team to get in and look at these materials. And then in the notes section, you can add information such as if there's specific things we need to know, like you need to click on this specific spot to get to the student edition or whatever, you can add any additional notes in this section. It's not required, it's just optional. And then you will add your program. It's going to take a minute to initialize and pull the standards for that program so you can start your correlations.
Janet, we're getting quite a few questions about the URL, like where to put it.
You're actually going to end up adding the URL at the component level. Okay, once your new program has been added, it's going to be down here under a list of action required because you still have something you need to do with this program. So for this program, I selected first grade science, and TEKS and ELPS are both required for this program. So you'll see that they're listed separately here, but when you click on one or the other, you can get to both of them. So I'm going to click on the TEKS part. Before you can do anything else, you're going to need to add components. And one thing I do want to let you know is, yes, this is being recorded, so you will be able to go back and look at this, but we're also going to provide a manual that has all these steps in it that you'll be able to follow. So once you add a component, you'll click Add Component. You can either import CSV of components. If you do that, you're going to click the instructions on the import file, and you can download a sample file that you can put your information in, and then you'll upload it back here. I'm just going to show you how to enter a component manually. So I am going to enter my component title. I'm going to enter my ISBN. Should be 13 digits. If there needs to be an additional ISBN, you can add it there. The audience for the component is either going to be teacher only, if it's only a teacher resource, or student teacher, if the students are going to have access to the content in that component. Then you're going to select what type of product it is, if it's digital, print, or both. I'm going to select digital for this. Then you're going to select the format type. Since I selected digital, I'm going to say online internet. And then you'll put the URL for that component. And I'm just going to call mine testprogram.com right now. Once you've added all that information there, then you will click Add Component. Once you have at least one component listed, then you can start entering correlations, but you have to have whatever components your correlations are going to come from listed before you can enter those citations, because you will have to select which component it is. So then you can return to the test, to the program. And this is going to be the program page that you'll see once you have your components listed. You can add additional components here. You can edit your program information here. If I needed to change the title of my program or add credentials, login credentials, I can do all of that from this page. If you notice here, there's a TEKS tab and an ELPS tab. The TEKS tab, as you go through, will show your percent complete, and then the ELPS tab will do the same when you're working on your ELPS. You'll scroll down and you can see all the student expectations for this course. You can jump to a specific student expectation if you need to, or a specific student expectation if you need to. And you can also filter by status of all expectations, either no action required or action is required. Right now, because we have entered nothing other than a component, everything still has action required. So you can click on the first student expectation. It's going to tell you what the student expectation is. It's going to tell you what the KSS, the knowledge and skills, and the expectation. And then you'll have a list of the breakouts. Now, this student expectation only has 2 breakouts. Some of them will have just 1 or 2. Some of them may have 20 breakouts. And as we said earlier, for this student expectation to be considered covered, you'll need a narrative and an activity citation for student/teacher to cover. If you realize you're not going to be able to cover all the breakouts in a student expectation and you would like to skip the expectation, you can do so. Skipping an expectation will make your progress of how complete you are move forward, but it won't be able to add to your TEKS percentage because there's not an opportunity for those breakouts to be scored. And then in the list here, you're only going to see the unmet breakouts. So as you work through, that list may change because once you meet a breakout, then it's going to go away. If you need to see all the breakouts, then you can click the link to view all the breakouts. So you'll click Add Edit Citations. You can see this is unmet because there are breakout requirements that must be met. And here's where you're going to add your citation. So my audience is going to be, for this example, student teacher. I'm going to say this is a narrative citation. I'm going to choose my one and only component. You will probably have multiple components, a page number, the URL, and this URL should go to the specific location of the material. And then you're going to enter your description of specific location. So my example here is beginning of the second paragraph. And I'm going to save my citation. Now you can see that I have met half of my breakout requirements. I have met the narrative citation requirements, but I have not met the activity citation requirements. So I'm going to, and I can see my citation I've already entered right here. So if I need to edit it for any reason or remove it, you have that ability. I'm going to go ahead and enter another activity citation. Oh, it didn't do my page number. If you do not fill in all of the required fields, you will not have the ability to save your citation. And if you click go to next breakout before you've saved or go to previous breakout before you've saved, then your citation will go away. You have to save it first. Now, as you see, I have met this breakout because I have done all the things needed. Now, for my example, I'm only going to go to where it shows met so I can move forward. You will more than likely want to add multiple citations so that if the review panel doesn't agree with that first citation, then they have another citation to go to score. So then I can click next breakout. And now you can see that there's only one unmet breakout. And here's my unmet breakout that I need to meet. So I'm going to enter a narrative. Now I'm just using the same URL for each time. You will use a URL that's specific to the location. One thing I do want to point out is if you have a print material and you are your material is in a PDF format, so you're linking to the PDF, you will use the page number here for the actual page of the material. But if the PDF viewfinder control doesn't match the page number in the document, then you will want to enter what the PDF page number is in your specific location. So for example, if this would then be PDF page 117. That way, when the reviewers are looking at it, they're going to look for page 112 because that's the page that's in the actual material. But if your link doesn't take you exactly to that specific location and it's actually PDF page 117, then that gets them to the correct spot to look at your citation. Okay, so with that narrative, I've covered half of my breakout requirements. I'm going to do another one for the activity just so I can show you Now that we have met, there are 0 unmet breakouts for this student expectation. If I want to go back to my program, I can click here and it'll take me back to my program overview page. I have completed 1 student expectation out of 44 total student expectations. You can see my progress is 2% complete. And then I can click, say, for example, I do not have materials that cover these citations or these breakouts. So if I want to skip this, you're going to get a warning about skipping, but you are able to undo it if you mark something as skipped and then later realize you do have content that covers that. So I'm going to mark this as skipped just so you can see. It changes, gives you an information about skipping it, and you can always click this button to unskip. I'm going to take you back here. It'll show your progress has moved forward because you have you've made it further in your correlation process. But as you notice, your system calculated percentage didn't change because you just skipped that student expectation. Okay, the other thing I want to show you is if you need to add additional users, you'll click here on Manage Publishers. You'll click on Manage Users. You'll have a list of who already has access, and then you'll click Add a User. For the username, it should be first name dot last name, then add their first name, add their last name, add their email address. You can add the title. It's not required, but you can add it, and you can add a phone number. You'll give them either edit permission or view only permission. And then you'll need to make sure that this box is checked so that they will get an email notifying them of this account creation so they can get there. And then you just click Add User. So we're only giving a minimal amount of user access, and then you can go in and do the rest of adding for anybody else on your team that needs access to the dashboard. Okay, I'm gonna, Amy, have there been a lot of questions on dashboard use, or is there anything I can?
So many questions.
A lot.
Okay.
And Amy's so fast, I'm answering as hers comes in, mine comes in right after. And I'm like, hey, we're doubling up.
The major question that has surfaced from several users is for a truly digital product, so not like an ebook or a PDF, how are they to cite a page number if they don't really have pages? And so I don't know if Janet or Cassie, you have any super great answers for that. My answer is I think I need to see your material, and then I can advise you on what you would enter in the page number field. So for those of you who have that question, we might have to just meet with you individually and see what you're working with, and then we can help you out.
Can I speak to that real quick? Because
Yes.
my thought would be that when we navigate to that particular URL, that page will scroll within it. So sometimes if it's a teacher facilitation piece, there's going to be 2 or 3 screens that you would be scrolling through without doing a page down option. So would we indicate within like the paragraph area, or do we need to have a numerical reference to question or facilitation point 2?
I mean, that part sounds like what you would put in your description of the specific location. So once you're at the place where the link drives you, how does the user navigate that page to get to the content you're citing? That's what you describe in the specific location field. But in
Right.
terms of page number, I honestly will have to see. I have a feeling the answer is going to be a little different for each of you. So I'll need to see your materials.
Okay.
And we have had a publisher in the past that it would say like slides 1 through 3 or something like that. in the page number field.
We also have a question about the teacher material ELPs versus the student material ELPs. And so what they're seeing is that there's a standard that's grayed out for the student, but it's not for the teacher. So that does mean that you need to show a citation that satisfies presence in teacher material. But the cool part about that is everything is teacher material. So citations you put in the teacher only fields can actually come from anywhere. And you can even label them student/teacher if the stuff is really in the student material. The system's going to recognize that as counting towards teacher coverage. And there are instances where certain ELPs are expected to be covered in teacher material, but not explicitly in student material.
And I navigated to a breakout for ELPs. And let me just click here on the add citations. So here in this one, it's showing that that you can either have a teacher only citation or a student/teacher citation for this to be accepted. This is K5. And for 612, it will say and a student and a teacher. But like Amy said, teachers have access to all the student materials. So if you have a student/teacher citation, it's going to cover the teacher only as well.
Okay, we do have a couple questions about what to do if we need to meet individually to set up a demo. So I would encourage you to submit an instructional materials help desk ticket. Janet, we do have a request to go into 3G in the ELPs.
Oh, okay.
That is one of the instances where it's required in teacher material and not student.
3G. Oh, that's not what I wanted. This is what I wanted. So
So can you show
3G,
them those breakout requirements? I think
that should be what's showing. It's going to be a teacher only or a student teacher. Well, everything in K5 is going to be this breakout requirements, a teacher only or a student/teacher. Either one will do because it's showing on the teacher only tab. So even in 6 through 12, you'll see this type of requirement, either or, because it's only on the teacher tab, it's not on the student tab. Does that make sense?
I'm going to go ahead and come off mute because I
Okay.
want to clarify this point in particular.
Mhm.
At 6 through 12, it has to be student facing, or it can be student or teacher facing for the ELPs. Because
At 6 through 12, most of them need to have it has to have a student facing.
okay, so a student citation will be required at 6 through 12.
On most of the breakouts.
Right.
For the ones that do not show student, it just shows teacher only,
Mm-hmm.
then it's going to be this scenario where
Either or. Okay, thank you.
it'll be helpful to look at the breakout, Science ELPs breakout link that Cassie shared earlier on. That shows you kind of bird's eye view, what's required where in both student and teacher. We have another question. How do SE and TE citations work if the curriculum is primarily TE facing but contains the black line masters for students?
Well, that citation would be a student facing, the black line masters would be intended for the student to have in front of them. So that would be a student/teacher citation. if you're
So
citing.
when you're thinking, publishers, about what is student versus what is teacher, what you should really be considering is who's the actual audience for the content. So especially in the lower grade levels, like K1, you don't have a lot of strong readers. So your student content is a little different, and it may be in the teacher materials in a space that says, you know, get your students in a circle and say these things and have them do these things. That can count as student facing content because it is actually intended for the students. The only thing that's really teacher is like teacher guidance and, you know, words that won't be shared with the students.
Right. And again, I'm coming off mute because I want to clarify this point in particular. Okay. Let me give you a hypothetical, like they say in the Texas legislature. If I have a ELPS component that is teacher driven and the student blackline master is included in the materials handed to the teacher, I am able to count items on that student blackline master as student facing because they are intended to face the student, even though it's a component that the teacher controls and distributes. Am I getting that right?
You got it exactly right.
Thank you.
Okay. Any other questions we need to address here?
I'm not seeing any. If I've missed some, folks, just feel free to come off mute and ask your question out loud.
Janet, there's still 45 minutes left. I didn't know how much longer you were going to be, but I just wanted to give you a time check.
Thank you. Okay. We're going to move on with the presentation, but if we have any additional dashboard questions, we can always come back to the dashboard later. Okay. So we've heard feedback from publishers that have used the dashboard previously, and they've asked for an easier way to add citations other than the manual entry. So our programmers are currently working on adding a citation import option. We expect that this new feature will be in the dashboard by early December. It's extremely important that you carefully read the instructions that come with the template that will be in the dashboard. There will be certain columns of data that must not be changed for the template to work correctly. The import option is not required. Publishers can use the manual option that I just demonstrated earlier. We will not have adequate time to address or to test the citation import CSV prior to making it available for you. So we ask that publishers only use the file with your preliminary correlations. That's for one course, 3 full student expectations, and do not use it again until TEA gives the okay. We'd like you to take note of any challenges that you have and provide feedback on how the upload worked for you or your company. And we'd like you to share suggestions or improvements. You can do that sharing by entering a help desk ticket with your feedback about this process. And then we'll gather that and see if we need to make any adjustments before we move past the preliminary correlations into entering the rest of the correlations for publishers. So here's a preview of what that upload would look like, what we have that they're currently working on. Columns A and B would not be able to be changed at all. You would not want to touch those columns. C, D, and E, these are just for information purposes. It's just the KSS, the student expectation, and the breakout. And then in F through K is where you're actually entering your correlations. So in the audience field, you would enter either teacher or student/teacher. For the type, you would enter narrative or activity. Then you'd enter the component ISBN. Again, you want to enter those without hyphens. You'd enter your page numbers. You'll enter the URL that goes directly to where you're citing, and then your description of location. The way it's set up right now is if you only entered, let's say, 6 citations for 1A1, then these last 2, you would just leave them with the word required in it, because the system's only going to pick up the data that you've entered in these other fields. You don't have to worry about deleting them off. If it's cleaner for you to delete them off, you can do so, but you can just leave all 8 available and put your information in the ones that you want to add citations for. This will be, of course, a long document because it will be all of the breakouts for that course. But remember, for this first go around, you're only going to do 3 full student expectations for whichever one course you're going to be providing preliminary correlations for. Now we're going to talk about determining standards, or determining the TEKS coverage. I want to let you know that the standards alignment dashboard will automatically calculate and display your TEKS percentage as you enter your correlations. You saw that as I was demonstrating. It only got to 2% because I didn't do very many, but it shows as it updates as you go through. When you click on submit for review you'll want to do that on the TEKS tab, and you'll be given the opportunity to override the system calculated score. There's not really a need to do that, but you do have that opportunity. You do not have that opportunity on the ELPs because ELPs have to be 100% covered, and so you have to put in correlations for 100% of the applicable ELPs. So the system calculated score is calculated by dividing the number of student expectations for which you provided the required citations by the total number of student expectations. This is the highest possible score you can receive based on the number of citations you provided. And then here I just listed some examples from Proclamation 2024 of the number of student expectations that are in certain courses. Okay. So I'm going to go through an example here. This one is for kindergarten science. It has a total of 39 student expectations. Let's say you provided at least 2 citations, 1 narrative and 1 activity for 35 of the student expectations. Then you would divide your provided SEs, which would be 35, by the total number of SEs, which would be 39, and you'd get a TEKS percentage of 89.74%. There are times which reviewers will reject some of your citations that you provide, and you will be given an opportunity during the review to provide new content or new citations for rejected breakouts, as long as your product is found by the reviewers to meet at least 75% of the system calculated score. So if you're found to be eligible to provide new content during the review, you will have 48 hours from the time that you receive your initial report to do so. So it's very important that you coordinate with your content staff to ensure they're available during the summer review time. And as soon as we have those dates set in stone, we will share this with you. So here's where we're going to talk about preliminary correlations. We ask that everyone submit preliminary round of correlations, which will allow TEA staff the opportunity to review your approach and to provide feedback. We will be evaluating your correlations for completion, for clarity, for accuracy, but we do not provide feedback about the actual content cited. We ask you that you complete citations for at least 3 complete student expectations before requesting feedback. After the preliminary round of feedback, we are happy to provide ongoing feedback if you request. But again, I want you to keep in mind that we do not provide feedback on whether the content is acceptable. It's just going to be what we'll provide feedback on whether the content, or not the content, but on whether or not the citation is clear and easy to understand and locate. All right, we're going to now pause there. If there's any questions about either the dashboard or determining standards, the TEKS percentage for the, or
David,
even we've covered so far.
There's a question someone asked, what can we use as a component ISBN if we only have digital materials? And then they asked, could they use their URL? So I didn't know if you wanted to just talk a little bit more about that, ISBNs.
So basically the program and component ISBN are the same.
If the program and the component ISBNs are the same, for the component ISBN, you could enter, let's say, a -SE or something on it because it needs to be unique to that component. That's going to be important when we get past the adoption phase and you have to enter official bids into our ordering system. Everything has to have a unique ISBN. Are there any more questions?
I have a few on the preliminary that I didn't want to ask earlier because I wasn't sure.
Okay.
On the preliminary correlations that we are keying into the portal, since TEA is not necessarily looking at the content for the URL in this case, does that content need to be live at that point, or is it just, or is the URL simply, again, to compare that we are on the right track of what the requirement is?
Well, we will be clicking that URL to see what the reviewers are going to see when they click that URL. So we're looking to see, is this citation easy to find? Are you giving a specific location? Can I go in there, excuse me, as a reviewer, I'm pretending to be a reviewer. Can I go in there, click on this link? Can I see what you're saying you're citing? Will the reviewer easily be able to find it?
Okay, so, that's one question. The second question I had on preliminary correlations, the preliminary correlations are only through the portal, or do we need to also, so we do not need to email a PDF or an Excel or anything to anybody. It's strictly the portal.
That is correct. The preliminary correlations are only the portal.
Thank you.
We have a question about whether or not they'll receive feedback on whether the citation meets the requirement for material intended for student use.
We are looking to see if the material, if the citations are clear and easy to understand. We're not going to be going over whether or not the content is appropriate.
But if they've cited something for student and it goes to something that's clearly teacher, would we say something?
Yes. If we know that it's clearly intended for the teacher, then yes, we will provide that feedback. If it's about how to implement the lesson and not specifically stating, say this to the students, then we would provide that feedback. Any other questions?
We are getting quite a few questions about ISBNs. So just to be clear, further down the road when we start doing official bids, everything is going to require a unique ISBN. So if you're a digital publisher and you have a 1-year license, a 2-year license, a 3-year license, and so on, each one of those options requires a separate ISBN. And then multiple components, everything requires a unique ISBN. And so if you're needing to purchase ISBNs, now's the time to do so. And then we have a question, can we use a temporary location for the content URL for the preliminary correlations, even if it's not the final location?
Can you help with that one, Amy?
Sure. As long as you're showing us a true example of what the reviewer is going to experience. So if you have to go back and change it later, that's fine. But what we're really looking at is like the technical aspect of your citations. So if I'm a reviewer and I look at the URL and then refer back to the page number and specific location, can I actually find the content? Yes, Chris, we do have some options for adding dash something to your ISBNs. I would say it's best to talk with us one-on-one so that we can make sure to find the solution that's going to work best for you in the long run, because we do want the ISBNs you use in your correlations to ultimately match what we're going to see on at least one of your official bids. Question, after the preliminary correlation data is entered, is there a save or submit button to use to indicating the preliminary data is completed?
You will not submit at that point in time. You will only submit after you've finished doing all your correlations. So what you'll want to do is just submit a helpness ticket if it's prior to that February 13th deadline, which we're going to go over deadlines in a minute, because the first round of deadlines is February 13th for preliminary correlations. So if it's prior to that, let's say January 15th, you're already done with your preliminary correlations and ready for feedback, then submit a help desk ticket to let us know so that we can go in and start reviewing those and provide the feedback right away. But like we said previously, if you're going to use the upload feature, don't go in after we've provided feedback and do it for the rest of your correlations, just for the preliminary.
I will just add to that, Janet, since we are hoping to finalize the CSV upload option, the more of you that use that option and submit early, the faster we can get to final on what that document is going to look like and how it will behave. And so if you're ready, and as soon as that option is available, we encourage you to go ahead and pull the trigger on submitting preliminary correlations. There's nothing final about that. It gives us an opportunity to test that feature out and to give you feedback. And so don't wait if you are ready. And then we had a question not related to correlations. Is there any information on a Proc 25 for CTE? The board did discuss the adoption cycle yesterday at the meeting. There was no decision made. I do expect that they will continue that conversation tomorrow during item, I think it's 5, at the full board meeting. And if they advise us to, we will bring a draft of proclamation for discussion in January, and it would be issued in April. I don't really have any hunch one way or the other on how that they're going to go.
Amy, I've got a couple of questions. Can you hear me?
I can.
Okay, great. One is about they're all kind of about the dashboard. One, do we know if there's going to be an export function capability once we've submitted all of our correlations?
Yes, there previously was an export function to download your correlations when they were final. I believe when we've made our updates that that's still available, but if not, I will make sure that it is available, because that is something that you will need and we will need as well.
Okay, and then my second 2 questions are just clarifications around, I think I saw somebody maybe ask this question, but when we are entering our program level information, the ISBN that we're at the very beginning.
Mhm.
The ISBN that we're adding there is really our complete description ISBN, correct? And then the component ISBNs that we then reference in the specific correlations are those TEKS-bearing components that are included on our complete description.
Yes. But you will, on your complete description, you will only enter the things that you'll be correlating to, but you will still want to have all of your materials, whether they're TEKS bearing or not, in that pre-adoption sample so they can be reviewed by either the review panel or the public.
Right. I'm just specifically talking about the ISBNs that will be entered into the dashboard.
Yes.
Because I've only gone through this with phonics and it was a completely different scenario.
Yes.
Okay.
I have a question going back to the export feature you mentioned.
Mm-hmm.
Once that feature is available, whatever the export format is what's going to be required to be sending to the ESCs and others, or is that simply for us to be able to have something to print out once completed?
Amy, correct me if I'm wrong, but they can use the CSV as their correlations to provide to the ESCs.
Yes. So if you're a publisher of digital materials, you're actually required to embed your correlations in your product. And so in that instance, when you send them your pre-adoption sample, and I suppose because we've staggered this, like when the deadline hits, then you need to have embedded your correlations into your digital sample. That's the only change you'll be allowed to make after submitting your samples. If you're not a digital publisher, then you can absolutely export and send along that file when you send them your sample access, or when I keep forgetting that it's the different deadlines, but when that deadline comes, you can send them that file. Other people also sometimes use that to actually embed their correlations. And so they'll create a PDF, make sure the hyperlinks are working, create a PDF and upload that into their platform. And that can count as embedding your correlations.
Okay. I just want to make sure that is not what is exported is not what we're required to send. It's just an option to send.
Correct.
Thank you.
Okay, any additional questions before we move on? Okay, now we're going to talk about what your next steps are. So if you've not done so already, you'll want to submit your company information form and statements of intent to bid. Even if you're remotely interested in participating, statements of intent to bid must be submitted by the December 5th deadline to participate in the proclamation. You can withdraw at any point in the process if you decide you no longer wish to participate, but you cannot join after the statement of intent to bid deadline. So if you think you want to join, submit those statements of intent to bid. You'll need to.
Does that include CTE, even though we're not in the proclamation yet?
It includes CTE for any courses that are in Proclamation 2024, because there are several CTE courses listed in Proclamation 2024. If you are wanting to submit materials for any of those courses, then you need to submit. And all the courses are listed in the Proclamation, in Proclamation 2024. Cassie, can you provide a link to Proc 2024 in the chat, please? Okay. Then you will need to identify who will enter the citations into your standards alignment dashboard, because when we are giving access right now, it's been the main contact on your company information form. And then if the person submitting this statements of intent to bid has an address listed on the company information form, then we have provided that person access as well. But you can provide as many user accesses as you need within your company for people to go in and work on correlations. Let's see. We are going to have office hours starting in December. On December the 6th, we're going to the first and third Tuesdays of each month from 1 p.m. to 2 p.m. Central Time. Cassie and I will be in the Zoom, and you can join and ask any Proclamation 2024 questions. It can be dashboard questions, it can be correlation questions, but we're there to support you through this process. If you have questions in between times, you can continue to submit help desk tickets. And then if we need to set up a separate meeting with you, we can do so. And then you'll want to start working on your preliminary correlations.
I know it's a bit early. I did put the office hour Zoom link there if you want to save it somehow. We will provide it later on if you lose it here. So don't panic if you misplace it.
Yes,
But it is here.
That link will be in the email that gets sent out with the recording as well. So you'll have it there.
I have a question. Is there any way to find out what our company information is and to update it? The prior account person left the firm, so I want to make sure we have the correct contact info.
Yes, submit a help desk ticket and we can share that information with you, and then you can update it as necessary. Or we can just reopen it and you can go in there and correct it.
And you do have to submit a new form for every proclamation. So what Janet said is true, to update something from a previous proclamation, or if somebody submitted it for this proclamation and then left.
Now, Amy, that will work if they have EMAT access. What happens if they don't have EMAT access? Do they just submit a new form? If it's coming from the website?
Yes.
Okay.
New question for the preliminary correlations. Do we have to satisfy all citation requirements for each breakout within a student expectation, to student, to teacher, or a portion of each?
Yes, we want 3 full student expectations, like you're completely finished with those. Of course, you can make updates later, but you will want to submit at least 1 narrative and 1 activity for student/teacher for each of those, just so we get an idea of how you're correlating to your material, so we can provide feedback. The more you enter, the more feedback we're able to look at, or the more citations we're able to look at and provide feedback. But we really only want 3 student expectations for 1 course. Okay, we're going to talk about some important due dates, and I have these broken up into 2 different timelines. So for science courses and then the CTE courses, except those that are marked with the double asterisks on the proclamation, you will have these deadlines. Everyone has the statement of intent to bid deadline on December the 5th. And then preliminary correlations in the dashboard by February 13th. That's the deadline. You can do them earlier, like Amy said, especially if you're using our upload import feature, so that we can get that feedback and make any adjustments we need to that. Pre-adoption samples are due on April the 10th, 2023. That's the same day the complete descriptions are due in EMAT. And final correlations are due in the dashboard on May 8th.
Janet, just to confirm, that's the deadline for the English pre-adoption samples and complete descriptions in EMAT, correct? Is
Yes.
it different for Spanish?
Yes, that's on my next slide.
Oh, sorry.
It's okay.
Jumped the gun.
That's perfectly fine. So for the technology applications courses, CTE courses in computer science and cybersecurity, personal financial literacy and economics, and the K-6 Spanish science. Like I said previously, all statements of intent to bid are due by December 5th. The preliminary correlation in the dashboard, that's by April 10th. And that's only if you haven't already submitted a preliminary correlations for a course in that first round of like in by that February deadline. If you hadn't submitted anything, then you do them by April 10th. If you've already submitted preliminary correlations, then you just disregard that. Then pre-adoption samples are on May 30th. Complete descriptions are due in EMAT on that same day. And then the final correlations are due in the dashboard on June 26th. Okay, we're going to pause one more time to see if there's any questions about next steps or any part of the training.
Janet, it's Carol Sandifer. You may have addressed this, but if we already have our publisher account because we submitted phonics, then we are working off of that same publisher account, right? In the portal, we just go in and add our new users, or?
Yes, that is correct.
Okay.
So if for any publishers that have already been in the dashboard for a previous proclamation or a previous cycle for the TRR, then you will just use your existing logins. If you need us to resend a link to change your password, let us know, send us help desk ticket, because we can do that and you can reset a password. And then like I showed earlier, you can go in and then add any team members that you need to have access.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Janet, someone's asking if you could go back one slide.
Yes.
Was there a question you had there, or you just needed to see it? One more slide.
Got one more slide. And we will PDF the slide deck and share it with you along with the recording.
There was a question, can the ISBNs entered in the dashboard be edited before the final submissions?
Yes, you're able to go in and make edits to your components and to your program. Let me show real quick. So here for program, I can edit my program information if I need to change an ISBN. And for my components, I can edit my component information at any point in time. We would like you to do that early in the process, though, because it will be, well, have it done by the time that the final correlations are due, because that's when we start running reports and things, and then it could get confusing if ISBNs are changing.
We have another question.
Okay.
Courses such as pathophysiology include TEKS covering engineering, including engineering design, that are not in the purview of the content. This means there are a number of SEs that these texts will fail to meet. What are the TEA expectations for these TEKS?
I don't know if I can answer that question, Amy.
I think I can.
Okay.
Okay, so pathophysiology is a course that counts as science credit. Therefore, it shares student expectations that are present in all science courses from chapter 112. And so the expectation for districts is that if they offer that course, they have instructional materials that cover 100% of those TEKS. That either has to be one set of materials that cover all the TEKS, or some combination of materials that ultimately end up covering 100% of the TEKS. So if your materials don't cover those student expectations, our expectation is that your materials cover at least 50% of the TEKS for a given course in order to be eligible for adoption. But just know that if your materials don't cover all the TEKS, that is a burden to districts who have to then go out and find additional materials to fill in those gaps.
Thank you.
One of the issues I see with what I saw already about the CTE courses is that the more contemporary content such as mechatronics, automation, engineering research. None of that content I can see anywhere there. So what do you recommend?
Are you saying you don't see a way to have that content in your materials?
Oh, it's in our materials. I don't see any courses that were listed on your document that would match close enough
Got it.
to a more contemporary curriculum.
Well, if your materials don't align to at least 50% of the standards for any of the courses in this proclamation, then I don't recommend submitting for any courses for this proclamation. That's not to say that your materials won't align to any future courses, but ultimately, you're going to have to decide if it's best for you to submit to this proclamation.
Is there an option for new and innovative or anything in a category like that?
We are limited to only those courses that the SBOE included in this call for instructional materials.
Okay, thank you.
Sure. That doesn't mean you can't sell your materials to districts if there's some course out there that would be appropriate for use of those materials, but just not through this process. We do have a question about, does the import have to be done in one go for a program? And can it be removed and re-entered? Do publishers have the opportunity to test correlations and hyperlinks once imported?
So in our conversation we had with our programmers, we did ask that there be a way to remove an import and re-import, so that publishers did have that option to be able to put something in and test it to make sure it works. Okay. Is that all the questions we have, Amy?
I think so.
Okay.
Someone did ask how soon after this, not to rush you, do you think you'll be sending out the PDF and the recording?
I would say, just to give myself a little time, I will hope to have it out by Monday, because I have to get the recording posted to YouTube so that I have a link to share that's going to be available for longer than 30 days that I could share the Zoom link for. So I have a list of everybody that registered for the webinar, and we will work on getting all of the things will end up being posted on the website as well. The link to the recording and the PDF, but I intend to send that email out hopefully on Monday. Okay, so if you have any questions after the meeting, please submit a help desk ticket, and then you can attend our office hours that are beginning on December the 6th. We really do want to hear from you. Your feedback is important to us. So we do still have about 10 minutes left. So if you could take the time right now, Cassie's dropping a link into the chat for an exit ticket survey that provides us feedback on how we can improve in the future. That concludes our training, and we are so happy you joined us today. Thank you for attending.